Phyllis Bennis is a fellow of the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C. She's also the author of Understanding Palestine and Israel. She's with us now. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. I want to ask you about what your assessment is of where the current state of play is with regard to the ceasefire. The comments by Donald Trump seem to suggest that whatever the eventual outcome, that Palestinians in Gaza are not going to have any role to play in the future of the Gaza Strip. Where does that leave the ceasefire negotiations?
Well, it makes it even more dangerous than we were seeing it already. Qatar has apparently asked U.S. officials to engage more forcefully with the parties, meaning with the Israelis essentially, to make sure that the second and third phases of the ceasefire can go forward. The ceasefire is very, very delicate, and I don't know that we're even going to make it through the 6 weeks of phase one, which was to include the release of about half of the remaining hostages, the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners that are being illegally held inside Israel, as well as allowing in massive amounts of humanitarian aid. And it's not at all clear that that's going to survive. The ceasefire depends on an agreement, among other things, that in phases 2 and 3, there will be discussions about continuing the ceasefire as a permanent reality, ending the war. And that has been from the beginning a Palestinian demand for the ceasefire negotiations. It was a major concession when they agreed to sign off on the ceasefire with the agreement only that there would be further negotiations towards making it permanent, rather than an acceptance of the permanence of the ceasefire right from the beginning. The Israeli position, the Netanyahu position, is we're not going to stop the war. As soon as we get our hostages back, we go back to war. That has been his position all along. He has made no secret of that. And the question was always, would the U.S. be able and willing, would there be the political will and the capacity to persuade, to force Netanyahu to make that move if at the point of negotiations in phase 2? That would require, I think, an explicit commitment to ending the arms transfers to Israel. So far, we have seen no willingness in Congress or in the White House with the last administration and the last Congress, or with this administration and this Congress, to do that, to even consider that. Without that, I don't know that the U.S. has the capacity to make real that kind of pressure that will be required when Netanyahu is insisting that his goal is to continue the war because he is going to defeat Hamas. He's going to get rid of, he's going to eliminate. These are the words he uses. This is not to make sure that Hamas is no longer in control. It's to say they're going to be eliminated. That means eliminating massive more numbers of civilians as well, of children, of elders, of women, of men who have nothing to do with Hamas, as well as killing off anyone who has any connection to Hamas. That is what he has claimed is his commitment and his promise to his supporters in the Israeli population. So I'm very worried about whether this ceasefire is going to be able to continue or not.
We've seen, obviously, the negotiators, Qatar and Egypt. The US has been involved in that process as well, very closely monitoring any indications of any deviations from the current ceasefire. We've also seen a tremendous global response to the statements that were made by Donald Trump. Does that global response in any way carry any weight when it comes to not so much Israel, but certainly with the US, given there are trading links between several of these countries, which are very important to the US?
No, absolutely. They are very important. And it's not only trade. Countries like Qatar, for instance, the UAE, are hosts to major military bases of the United States. They don't want to risk losing them. On the other hand, these countries are very dependent on the United States to provide all their weapons. They don't get military aid in the form of cash, but they get virtually unlimited access to U.S. weapons, bombers, planes, bombs, drones, guns, bullets, all those things that they want largely to suppress their own populations. And in that context, I think it's a big question whether or not on either side there would be willingness to break the relationships. The public opinion in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, certainly, in all of these countries, in Jordan and Egypt, public opinion is enormously in support of the Palestinians. enormously opposed to the genocide that Israel has been carrying out for 16 months. But these are not governments that are particularly concerned about public opinion until and unless it gets to the point of threatening the stability of their regimes. And we should note that this could be a factor. For Egypt, for example, Egypt has experience with a US-backed dictator being overthrown in a popular uprising. The current government in in Egypt, the current US-backed military leader does not want to face the same thing. Jordan and Egypt both are very dependent on the US for military support. So their firm commitment that they're stating right now that they will not allow Palestinian refugees to be expelled from their own country and shipped off to either Jordan or Egypt, that could change as well if the US threatened to withhold the $1.3 billion a year in military aid to Egypt, the $1 billion a year in both economic and military aid to Jordan. These are issues of financing the regimes that they are not going to be very willing to give up. So this level of support in the region for the Palestinians is at the level of people, not so much at the level of governments, except to the degree that they could be threatened. The real opposition is coming from outside the region, both at the governmental and at the public level, and it is enormously strong. But we have not seen yet any indication from this new version of the Trump administration that they have any interest in what the United Nations says, what the International Court of Justice might say, what people around the world are saying, what this could mean in terms of boycotts, in terms of divestment campaigns, targeting US companies, not only Israeli companies, but seeing the US as complicit in this genocide. This could absolutely be one of the effects of this latest set of statements by President Trump, which he is so far unwilling to walk back, even as his top public-facing staffers are trying desperately to say, no, he didn't really mean that. He's going on social media and saying, yes, I did. That's exactly what I meant. This is a very dangerous moment.
We really appreciate you giving us the benefit of your opinion on this. Phyllis Bennis, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.